What's up? So I like PowerShell and I want to be able to help other people learn PowerShell easily because I think it's cool. So I bought a book called Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches and I want to go through it. So we'll start on chapter 1. Let's go through this here. Before you begin, just turned 15 years old. I remember when I first got into PowerShell. I took a look at it when it was called something else. I think it was Monad. And when I first saw my first command, get dash child item, I was like, this is way over my head. Doesn't make any sense. I'll never figure it out. And I didn't look at it again for a while. But then I looked back at it and I went through the PowerShell in a Month of Lunches book. I don't remember if it was the first or second edition at the time, but then it just clicked with me and it made so much sense and it was awesome. And I was using it to administer a bunch of Windows servers, and now I use it to work with Microsoft 365 and Azure, and it's amazing. Looks like they also use Windows, Linux, and Mac OS in this book. It says primarily they're going to focus on Windows, but it does work in Mac and Linux. So it's been a while since I've actually got into PowerShell because after I started learning it, version 3 came out and I was like, oh, this is awesome. New updates. And then version 4 came out. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then when version 5 came out, I was already at the point of like, well, I can already do the most of the things I need to do. So it's cool that they're updating it, but it doesn't seem to be too much in the way of my workflow. And then they separated it out with PowerShell 6, known as PowerShell Core, so that they could open source that and work with Linux and Mac. So I didn't have too much involvement with that because I mostly just used PowerShell as it was built into Windows. I didn't like to have to install anything else if I didn't need to. Even modules, I was always trying to avoid installing things. And now they're on PowerShell 7. They just dropped Windows because they leave the Windows to the ones that come with the Windows operating system. And now it's just called PowerShell 7 because they're on the 7th version. And that one is different from the one that's built into Windows because it's got a ton of different features. And unfortunately, they also dropped support for the PowerShell ISE, the integrated scripting environment. That was my jam. And to this day, it still is. I know a lot of people are probably thinking that's ridiculous. It's so old and outdated because they stopped supporting it. Now with PowerShell 7, they want you to use VS Code and figure out how to use all that. And I tried that multiple times, at least twice. And every time I took a look at it, I was like, again, it's just not anything that affects my workflow. So why, if what I have works, it's not broke, don't fix it. PowerShell 5 comes installed on Windows. The ISE comes installed on even Windows 11, and I can use it to do my job. So trying to change my entire life to install PowerShell 7 and install Visual Studio Code and install the plugins and change my whole workflow, I was not about that life. But I think this book is going to go through that with us. So I might have to just get updated and figure this thing out. The way I'm probably going to do these videos is just like it explains here. The idea behind this book is that you'll read one chapter each day. Don't have to do it during lunch, but it should only take you about 40 minutes. So I'll just go through a chapter here and we'll see how it goes. There's also a lot of help online at PowerShell.org, as well as the PowerShell subreddit, reddit.com/r/PowerShell. you can find a lot of helpful advice there. It says here that Windows comes with PowerShell 5.1. You have to download and install PowerShell 7 separately. It runs side by side with PowerShell 5.1, which comes pre-installed. Most of these labs will run in Windows PowerShell. Instructions on how to install PowerShell 7 can be found here. And we'll also be using VS Code with the latest release of the PowerShell extension. Okay, it looks like they'll explain how to install it in a moment, but we can check the PS version table. So if I just open the Windows Start menu and type PowerShell, we open this one here, and we do, as it explains, $PS version table, we'll see our current version. And it looks like we're working with 5.1 here. And it looks like that's it for Chapter 1. I skimmed ahead a little bit, and Chapter 2 explains how to get it installed. So we'll be going over that in the next video. Peace.